Hello and welcome back to this course. In our previous video, we were able to learn how to load data from our CSV files and also how to filter the data that we want to get from our CSV files by passing in some conditions. Okay, so in this video, we are going to be learning how to clean up our data. All right, so why do you need to clean up your data? Now, this is a CSV file that we are using. We just have some raw data, the ID of the person, the name, the age, and the city, right? So if, for instance, you were provided with an Excel sheet or a CSV file like this that contains some raw data, but those data, well, they do not exactly meet the standard that you require. Okay, let's say this name variable, you require all of them to be in small letter, and probably the age variable, you require all of them to be in decimal point, or there are some missing values in some of this, and you probably need to find the mean or the standard deviation or anything that you need to find for that particular column. Then it's going to be a bit difficult for you. So the first thing you do when you get your data is to clean up your data. All right. So the cleaning could involve filling in null values, dropping null values, or probably even changing the data types of the data contained in a particular row, or even calling some string methods on string data contained in your data frame so that you could convert them to uppercase or lowercase or anything that you feel is necessary. Okay, so without further waste of your time, we are going to delve into the practical aspect of it. So now the first thing that we are going to do is that, well, we're going to use this print line again, and we're going to be using our Excel file. So if you look at this Excel file, I just removed the age data for this particular row, so I could as well remove for other rows, right? And I could remove the city value for this particular row, and I am going to save this. Now I'm going to try to print to check if there are null values in this particular CSV file. All right, so what I'm going to do is that I'm going to clear up this print statement, and again the name of our data frame is df1. And what do I want to print? Well, I want to call the isNull method on this particular data frame. So this is going to show us the fields that are null and the fields that are not null. So it's going to return a Boolean data for all of the fields. So I am going to print this, and we can see that all of this row says false. These ones are not null. But if you come to the age column, you see that 0 index and the 7th index says true, and then the city column says that the number 2 index is null. Okay, so now another thing you can do is that you can decide to say that you want to sum up all the null values. So you can say that you want to call dot is null dot sum. And if we run this code now, we are going to get the summation of all of the null values on each column. All right, so we have 0 on the ID column, on the name column 0, and then age and city, we have some null values. So now, another thing that I would like us to do is that I'm going to fill in those data. So this particular one, I'm going to fill in 20. And the next one that I removed initially, I'm going to fill in 19. And this, well, I could just copy one of these cities and I will paste it here. So now I would like to get the mean of this particular value with and without the null state. So I'm going to get the mean of the age column, and I'm going to get it with or without the null state. So I'm going to pass in the age row. And what do I want to call on this age row? So I'm going to say age dot, well, mean. So you can call the mean, the median, and even the standard deviation on every numerical row. Okay, so and I'm going to run this. So we have 28.5. So the average of this age row is 28.25. So now I am going to remove some figures. So I'm getting rid of 20 and I'm getting rid of 19. And I'm going to save and run this again. So, and when we do that, okay, I think I didn't save before I checked the first mean. So I'm going to add in 20 and I'm going to add in 19. So 19. So now I'm going to save this and I'm going to run the script. So now on checking this, we have 26.25, right? Because I've added in some data. All right. So what happened before was that Python skipped those rows that do not have any data on the age column. Now, the right thing is that we have 10 rows here, and assuming you are calculating the average of a student's score in a year, as far as the subject is taken in that school or in that class, even if the person did not write the exam, you are going to calculate that subject alongside. The only thing you need to do is that you are going to pass in like 0 for that particular subject, but you are surely going to calculate that field. So assuming you have 10 subjects and the student did not take one subject in the examination, your average is still going to be, well, the total sum of the scores over 10, not the total sum of the scores over 9. All right. So with that said, so right now I'm going to remove some values from here, and I'm going to just leave some of them open. And if I save and I run this, we have 28.125. So now Python has skipped the columns that has no value, and that is why we have a higher number. So I'm going to clear this. And as well, I'm going to quickly paste in a logic that can get this mean for us with the values removed or without the values removed. So here I'm going to add in 20. I think it was 2020. We had 2020. So and I'm going to save this so that our changes can reflect, and then I run. So we can see now that we have the same mean, right? When the numbers are not null. So let's now make some of them null. And I save, and then I'll go back to my script and run it. So you can see there are much difference. So the mean method when there are no values is far higher, but the normal logic is a bit lower, and that is because the mean method by default will not calculate the rows that has no value. It will skip them, which is not supposed to be, because assuming, like I said earlier, you have a student that you need to get the average, or a data that want to get the average, you would have to include including the null rows. So I hope you understand this. So other operations that we can perform for null values include, we can decide to drop null value, that is to drop the rows. So I will just say that here I want the null value to drop. So I'm going to call this function, and this function will simply drop the rows that are null, right? So and this data has returned, and it is telling us that the number 0 and number 1 index are no longer there. So if you look here, you see that it's only those two indexes that are not there. So now we can also decide to fill the null values in with a custom value. So how are we going to do that? So we are going to tell Python that when you get to the age column, that you should fill in the null value, and you should fill it with this particular value, right? So this is going to fill in the null value with 0, right? And if I run this now, we will see that the null values has been filled in with 0. Okay, so now you can see the two null values has now filled in with 0. I'm going to call the mean method again on this object. So, and I'm going to clear this. So if we run it now, well, we should get something very close to what we had when we calculated the mean with null values manually. All right, so that is one way you can clean up your data or processing. So another thing we are going to do is that we will try to replace some values with another value. All right, so we can decide that when we get to this CSV file, everywhere we have Chicago, we want to replace with Nigeria. So print it. So how are we going to achieve that? Well, we can go ahead and print so that we see the the effect immediately. So I'm going in with my data frame 1, and the next thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to say dot replace, and I'm going to open and close my parentheses, and then I'm going to enter a dictionary object there. So what do I want to replace? Well, I want to replace the word Chicago with the word Nigeria. So, and we are printing it afterwards. So clearing our terminal and running this, we have, well, the two places that had Chicago are now Nigeria, all right, instead of Chicago. So another thing you might need to do is probably to drop duplicate objects. So I'm going to clear the terminal, and the next thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to say that I want to drop duplicates. So wherever I have duplicate objects, so I'm going to call the drop duplicate method on this data frame. So I'm going to say dot drop duplicate, and I'm going to pass in some arguments here. So the first argument I'm going to pass in is the subset argument, and this is set to the field that you want to use and check for the duplicate data. So here we have Chicago twice in the city column. So, and here I'm going to pass in city as our subset. So I'm going to write in city, and I'm going to pass another argument, and that is in place. So I'm going to say in place, and I'm going to set it to true. So what this does is that it is like replacing the original version with what we have currently as after dropping the duplicate file, right? So, and I'm going to save this, and the next thing I'm going to do is I will now print the current version of the data frame. So, and we are going to run this. So I'm going to also comment these two items out so that we see only the output for this. So, and I'm going to run this. So now we have, well, just one Chicago appearing here. All right. So we can now see how we can remove duplicate data from our file. So that is it for your data cleaning in this series, and I hope you understand the various ways you can clean up your data before you can start using them in your project. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.